Viktor Orban is a controversial figure. He is in high esteem by the people on the right wing of the political spectrum. He is seen as the protector of Hungary against immigration and an inspiration to many politicians. But he's also seen as Russia's inside man in the EU. Now, in the upcoming election in Hungary, there's a new contestant that could shake his rule, and Orban could lose the upcoming election. Now, after 16 years of ruling, what is at stake for Hungarians and for the EU? How did he stay in power for so long? And why would people vote him out? We are going to find it out in this video. Now, there's a new political opponent called Péter Magyar, who has emerged in the Hungarian political field about 2 years ago, also himself coming out of the ruling Fidesz party. He is currently leading the polls by about 20%. And Orban has recently been involved in a number of scandals. There is allegations that the Hungarian Secret Service was trying to break into and destroy the opposition party. Other investigations have shown that people's votes are being purchased or they are being coerced to vote for the right party. More recently, Orban's foreign minister Péter Magyar has been accused of leaking confidential information from EU talks to Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov. Orban also floated the idea recently of a Hungarian exit from the EU. So, needless to say that the stakes for this election are quite high for the Hungarians. And me, being a Hungarian, I'm offering to give you a somewhat insider view into Hungarian politics in order to try to understand what's going on and what can be expected as the outcome of this election. Now, in order to understand who Viktor Orban is and how he is ruling, we have to understand where he comes from. During the early 1990s was a revolutionary time for European history. The Berlin Wall came down, the Soviet Union fell apart, and in that period was the change of regime in Hungary, when the old socialist government of the Socialist People's Party was discontinued and a new, supposedly democratic system grew up. And Mr. Orban himself was a young politic activist at that time. He has funded the Alliance of Young Democrats as a counter-organization to the Hungarian Young Communists League. So it was seen as a new liberal movement. And then it turned into a party, the Fidesz party, who at that time was a liberal right-wing party. And Orban was elected as member of parliament in the first elections in 1990. And then he also got elected as prime minister in 1998. He served his term, but then he lost, and there was 8 years of rule in Hungary by the Hungarian Socialist Party's government. At the end of that rule, the then prime minister, Ferenc Gyurcsány, has admitted in an internal meeting that they have been lying in their campaign. At that time, it was a huge scandal in Hungary, which has helped Fidesz into a landslide victory, winning a 2/3 majority in 2010. Now, after that landslide elections, did they use their power to do something good to the country? No, not really. They used their power to cement their power and secure the next consecutive wins in the upcoming elections. Also, unfortunately, Ferenc Gyurcsány stayed in politics, founded his own party, the Democratic Coalition, and he has stayed the most hated figure in modern Hungarian politics, and he has been a problem for the left political side of the parties, the opposition to Orban's party, in the elections that came afterwards. So the left side was divided into small parties. On the right side, there was Fidesz that ruled by an overwhelming majority. And they have used their power to reshape Hungarian democracy, change the election system to their benefit. Now, in order to understand how he has stayed in power for so long, we also have to understand how his system works. And it works in the following way. If they want to build a road or a stadium or something, they can use European funds for that. So there's money coming in either from European taxpayers or from Hungarian taxpayers. Then they are writing a tender for that job to be done, but they write it in a certain way that only a handful of companies will be able to do that job. And those companies will often be companies of his friends. Those companies will then do the job, but with a really, really high profit margin. That profit can then be brought back into the organization of Fidesz in sneaky ways, and that money can be used to finance their propaganda. And using the propaganda, they are able to control people's understanding of the world in order to win the next election, and the system perpetuates itself. His former neighbor, Lőrinc Némészáros, as well as his son-in-law, are both billionaires by now, Now, the law doesn't help because Fidesz has, using their two-thirds majority, have put people into right positions so that these ways of corruption cannot get prosecuted. Now, the EU has noticed what's going on, and in 2022 they have stopped funding Hungary, partially because of concerns of democracy, but also concerns about corruption and where their money is actually going. Fidesz has also used their power to distort the Hungarian election system. They did get a landslide victory of 53% of the votes in 2010, which has given them a two-thirds majority. So the system was distorting already, but they have tweaked it a little bit so that in the next election, when they only got 45% of the votes, they still got two-thirds majority in the House of Parliament. And they have been doing this on every election ever since. In order to understand how Orban maintained his power, we have to understand what happened in the world economics and in Hungary during his reign. And while economics helped him get elected, you see, the 2008 to 2010 crisis was especially hard-hitting on Hungary, and the disapproval of the then socialist government has helped Orban win by a huge majority. But then when he got elected was the good times in world economics. Between 2010, 2012, and all the way to COVID 2020, there was a long period of growth in the world economics and also in the German economy. And the Hungarian economy is very much dependent on the German economy because there's a lot of exports. So the outset was good, the environment was good, and everything was given for the country to prosper. On top of that, there was the next cycle of the European Union budget. And in that budget cycle, Hungary has received a huge number of financial help from the European Union in order to develop the infrastructure and the country in general so that the eastern side of Europe can be brought higher up and be similar or somewhat similar to the West, which would then help all of the internal market. People felt that there was progress, that they were living better and better year to year. They have associated that with the ruling government. But in reality, Orban, instead of winning the election and starting to work and then campaigning with his results, he never really got to work. He won the elections and then he stayed in campaign mode. It was that time when he has invented enemies. He has invented the enemy of George Soros, who, according to him, was trying to overthrow his government. He has used the migration crisis as a talking point, saying that if we allow the migrants, then everything is going to fall apart. Of course, the migrants never really wanted to come to Hungary. They just wanted to go to Germany and Sweden and other parts of Europe. So these problems weren't really real problems, but he has used them in a very populist way to divide the voters and gather support for his side. And in the same time, the left side, the opposition, was more incompetent, honestly saying. Ferenc Gyurcsány was still around. All of the other parties didn't really know what they were going to do. And so people could choose a visibly populist leader or an incompetent group of others. And so that situation has helped Orban to maintain his rule. In the 2020 campaign, he has campaigned with an even more simple language, war. By that time, the leader of the opposition has said that if NATO wanted, Hungary would send troops to the war in Ukraine, which has just broken out before the election. And this has given Orban the opportunity to do his campaign as war against peace. If you vote for Orban, you will get peace. If you vote for the opposition, you will get war. And this really, really simple, basic messaging has helped him to stay in power and win a, again, landslide victory in 2022. Now, while he was really good at communication, the statistics didn't really help him coming up to this new election. We can see that the hospitals and the healthcare system is basically falling apart. We can see that the education is falling apart because pupils have lower and lower scores in the PISA test. GDP growth has pretty much stalled since COVID. In the same time, inflation is very high, wages are low, Hungary has a huge levels of corruption, and there's also a housing crisis. On top of that, the currency has lost a lot of its value, and at some point it looked like it's going to collapse. And those were the reasons for me to leave the country. Like, I don't live in Hungary anymore. I decided to move after the 2022 elections. as many others. There's hundreds of thousands of Hungarians living abroad, partially because of Orban's rule and his policies. Now, his most recent campaign, the campaign for the 2026 elections, is the most absurd one to date. As he has no results to show, all of the statistics are against him, he has to resort to his previous messaging and the messaging of war. And that's a really evil move, because in Hungary, the oldest people might still remember the Second World War or the aftermath of the Second World War. Even the generation of my parents would remember the Yugoslavian conflict, where there was a question of whether or not Hungary would enter the war. So the terrors of war are still in people's heads. And so this messaging will bring out that most basic and that most fundamental human emotion of fear. He also somehow made the Ukrainians the bad guys. According to his narrative, the opposition TISA party stands with the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are financing that party. Basically, Péter Magyar and the TISA party are Ukraine's inside people in Hungary that want to take the Hungarians' money and send it to Ukraine, and they also want to take the people of Hungary and send them to war to fight on Ukraine's side. Of course, none of that is true, and the party of TISA has a program of 250 pages where these are factually outlined as not true. Now, it's worth mentioning that Orban himself has not published a program. His program is just one word: we will continue. That's his program. Now, Orban also managed to use the recent conflict about the gas pipeline of Druzhba, friendship, to escalate the tensions between Hungary and Ukraine. The friendship pipeline was blown up by the Russians in January, and Orban somehow, instead of blaming the Russians, started to blame the Ukrainians for not repairing the pipeline. He has blamed the Ukrainians intentionally sabotaging that pipeline in order to blockade Hungarian crude oil supply. His campaign is on war versus peace, and according to him, he is the only person that is able to save Hungary from getting into war. He's trying to position himself as a savior of people, the only person with experience, and everyone else that people could choose is a recipe for disaster, according to him. Now, you can see that Orban wants people afraid. He doesn't want grown-up political debate. He wants simple emotions, because those emotions he can control. He has also refused to take part in any TV debate of the prime minister candidates. Now, in the last 2 weeks, a number of scandals and whistleblowers have come out and news have been published that are not in Orban's favor, but these will give us a glimpse into how his system really works. There is an accusation that in the underdeveloped regions of Hungary, where a lot of people live in poverty, the organization of Fidesz, including the mayors and the local representatives, they use their organization to purchase or coerce the votes of people living in poverty. People are ransomed or blackmailed to vote to the correct party. Otherwise, they can lose custody of their children, they can lose access to socially provided firewood or medicine, or drug addicts are threatened with being taken into jail. So it seems the system is maintaining poverty so that they can use it to their advantage when the election comes. In another story, it seems that the Hungarian Secret Service has been trying to infiltrate the opposition TISA party. And when the members of that party and people working in the party tried to uncover that, then another branch of the Hungarian police have raided their place in order to stop them from uncovering those secret agents. So it seems that the authorities are being used against a democratic party, which is really serious. Then, in another piece of news, the Hungarian foreign minister, Péter Szijjártó, was accused of leaking confidential information from EU talks to the foreign minister of Sergei Lavrov, and he has admitted that, and he said this is just diplomacy. There's also a taped telephone conversation where he admits to have used his influence in the European Union to remove a Russian oligarch from the EU sanctions list at the request of Sergei Lavrov. There is also news that there might be Russian Secret Service agents helping Orban's campaign. It also seems that the army is falling apart. A high-ranking official came out saying that the army is in a horrible state, but also provide us information about Orban's son, who is also in the military, and then he is planning a mission to Chad, where he is expecting 50% of the soldiers to die during that campaign, in the same time when Orban is campaigning with peace. Now, why would anyone vote for a person like that? Like, what's people's reasons to vote in spite of all of this absurdity that I have just explained? I believe, based on what I have seen, there's 3 or 4 groups of people, depending on the reason they vote for Orban. The first one is people that are being forced. As we have seen in this YouTube video, which I have shown, and the allegations, it seems about 500,000 people are being blackmailed to vote for the right party, which is just crazy. Another group of people is the people who actually benefit from his policies, and that's fair enough. His policies have always favored married couples with 3 or even more kids, kind of the Hungarian dream of sorts, and those people have always been given favorable policies. It's like, if you have the money in Hungary and if you're married and you have a family, then the government will help you to get even better and even further ahead in life. They did not help all of the other groups of the society, but this one group was helped very much. It is somewhat understandable that they would vote again because of their own interest. Now, the third group is the group that believes the propaganda. The government of Orban has been really successful in buying up news outlets. They basically have all of the local newspapers. They have one of the 2 major televisions, and they have purchased at least 3 major news sites of the internet. So there's a lot of money being pumped into this system. Also, they are using the state-owned media, kind of like the Hungarian version of BBC, to just share propaganda. And a lot of people grew up with the assumption that if something is on TV, then it must be true. And so they believe everything that Orban is telling them about Ukrainians and George Soros and all about these imagined enemies. And so from that point of view, it would seem logical to vote for Orban. Without getting into generalizations, we can also see from the studies and the polls that the more educated someone is, the less likely it is that they will vote for Orban and Fidesz party. The less educated someone is, the share of Fidesz voters is actually higher. But now Orban has difficulty because now finally there's a new contester, and that's Péter Magyar and his new Tisza party. And they are currently leading in the polls by about 20%, which is a huge thing. So how did he do it? I think something that's really interesting about Magyar is that he agrees with Orban on the fundamental points. You see, with Orban, the problem has never been what he says, it has always been what he does. So on the surface, on the level of words, his party stands for strong borders, strong national identity, families first, and providing opportunities for the hardworking people. But you can agree or disagree with these points, but these are valid arguments to be fighting for. He also lowered some of the taxes that the higher income people would benefit from. So it's a right-wing economic program. You can agree with that or disagree with that, but these are valid points to argue for. The problem has never been what Orban said, it has been what he did. Now, Péter Magyar is not doing the opposite, he's just doing it better. He himself also came from Fidesz, like he himself believed in those values. He was the former husband of the Minister of Justice before him breaking out of Fidesz. According to him, he broke because he couldn't agree anymore with the direction that was taken, and he wanted to do it better. Of course, that raises questions. Péter Magyar has built a centrist right-wing party with a strong program and on strong foundations. On the basic values, he agrees with Orban. He wants a strong national identity. He's pro-Europe. He wants to maintain the fence and stop illegal migration. A lot of those things that are important for Hungarian voters. Also, his campaign is very different from Orban's. Péter Magyar has been visiting around 700 villages and towns in Hungary. He has gone on a campaign to talk to as many people as possible. His campaign is also somewhat similar to Obama's Yes We Can campaign in the way that he wants to build a Hungary that works. A country that operates, the country that can do better than how it is doing currently. He also speaks in a very inspiring way. Instead of Orban's fighting against whatever enemy, Péter Magyar draws from 18th century culture of Hungary, which was very humanistic, very defining for what is Hungarian culture, how we speak the language. A lot of the buildings that are popular in Budapest have been built in that period. So that is a very fruitful, beneficial period for Hungarians in general and something to be proud of. And with Orban's propaganda, we haven't been proud of anything for a long time. So it makes a lot of people feel better about themselves. Also, his party consists of people that are completely fresh to politics. People that come from the private sector, and absolutely nobody has links to the previous system. Unlike in Fidesz, there's actually people that served under the Socialist People's Party. Somehow they managed to rebrand themselves as Democrats. So in some ways, the change of regime really didn't happen in 1990. It will take for a new party for this change to completely happen, and that can provide a fresh start for Hungarians. Now, what would Orban's defeat mean for Hungarians, for Hungary, and for Europe? As for Hungarians living abroad, for me personally, it would mean that there would be less explaining for me to do when being asked about being Hungarian and the role that our government plays in the world. It would make us feel better, it would make us feel prouder about being Hungarian. Now, for the EU, it would mean that there would be one less double agent in the European Union. There would be one less person trying to veto everything that the Union is trying to do together. For Hungarians in Hungary, I believe with a new government, the country can start developing again. And there's a lot of developing to be made, because during that 16 years, the government hasn't really done its job of governing. They haven't operated the systems of the state. They haven't worked on making things better. They just kept campaigning. So whoever comes next will have a really, really difficult job to do. Also, the world is becoming a more transactional, more dangerous place. With economic and military superpowers such as China and Russia, Europe has to stand together, because together we are an economic superpower. Separated, we are just a group of small countries. So I think in this time it takes more unity, and Orban is against that unity. So when he's out, would actually benefit the European Union. This election won't just decide the future for Hungary, but also its role in the European Union, at a time when unity is more important than ever. Now, if you want to read more about that, I'm also going to provide some links to investigative journalism pieces that have been available with either in English or with English subtitles, and those are really interesting to look if you are interested. With that said, this video is recorded at the 3rd of April, so if something happens between recording and publishing, those scandals will of course not be mentioned in this video. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please do give me a like, please subscribe to this video, and I will see you in the next one.